Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 36 of the Pylon Show. We have a full cast and beautiful guests here, even one shadow guest. But we'll get around to that in a second. I'm your host in control. Always a pleasure to introduce my co-host here, Dan Artosis Stemkowski, back from visiting Skynet Central over in England is actually where the end of the world will be originating from, and a lot of people think I was going to make an imperialist joke. We'll just, you know what? We'll stay away. We'll stay away from those jokes. We'll talk about robots.
Wow. You've really had a lot of self-restraint since that apology episode, Jeff.
There'll be more apology episodes, I'm sure, given who I am. But I want to introduce our guest for this special AI-centric talk. We have the pro gamer, the myth, the legend, captain of what was once a great team, Team Liquid. It is...
Well, at least it is still a team.
It is still a team.
Which is more than we can say for most teams.
That's true. That's true. So, Dario, thank you for joining us. Appreciate
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Dario does have to go at like 7:30, right? Something like that? Well, I mean, 7:30 to me, but like 10:30 to you?
Yeah, it's just about then.
Okay, so I apologize if you guys are asking some of those incredible Patreon questions. Some of them might not get answered by Dario, but you can ask, of course, to his empty seat. But we're not alone. We also have a duo here. For the first time ever, two people as one guest, which I'm going to say was not my idea, and it's a little offensive, because I think each one of them could have been their own guest, but here they are, joined at the hip.
We're okay.
A package deal. Yeah. ESChamp and EnderSword. Guys, thank you for coming on. Appreciate having you here.
Thanks. We'll answer simultaneously.
Short and to the point. Yeah. Well done, you guys.
Yeah.
And then without a webcam, but making an appearance here as the voice of someone who's made some really informative and great videos and is just an awesome person in general, we have BrownBear. BrownBear, how are you doing?
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
We're happy to have you.
He doesn't have a webcam, but we get to be one webcam.
Yeah. This is a budget episode of the Pylon Show. Like we were like, we're not going to have
cute little bear thing. Yeah. Or is that a car? I'm not even sure, but it's,
it's a green bear.
We needed that on there.
Not even a brown bear. I just hopped out of the shower, so if you're wondering why there's water pouring off my body, it's just been a busy day of making content, and we're all happy to be here. So this episode is going to be piloted mostly by Mr. Artosis, because I too have to jump off fairly early to catch a flight to go cast WCS Winter, but I'm going to do the introductions because
was it announced yet what the casters are?
Yes.
Oh, because normally that doesn't happen until like
Dan, it was announced way early this time. I think it was 2 days ago, which was like 3 days before the broadcast. So this is like the most informed people have ever been. So that's where I'll be, but I'll be back for next week. Anyways, we'll talk about that later. We're not going to do. We're not doing This Week in StarCraft.
We are skipping like everything.
We're just going to talk content.
Episode. We are going to talk. Well, here's the thing. Pizza Pie Biweekly, this is one of its off weeks. So there's nothing to talk about anyways. So we're just going to talk about DeepMind and AlphaStar.
But before that, some sweet selling out is to be had here. And that's why I'm basically here in general. This show could not be possible without people supporting it. So for those of you tuning in, be it on YouTube, the podcast, or even just in this Twitch channel, thank you very much. But if you're wondering, is there more that I can do to make this content even better? There is. You could go ahead and join us on Patreon, The Pylon Show, and become one of the 300 plus people that support us there and make it possible for us to make this amazing content. And the other ways, there it is. Not to thank you to everyone. That's a lot of people. Really appreciate that, you guys. We also have a match-arena, which is Dan's favorite part of every episode. Today's keyword is one word, Skynet. There it is, right there for you, Skynet. If you go to our match-arena, you type that in. It takes $0 from you, but it literally creates dollars for us. This is actually a scam, but everyone's in on it. So we need you guys to get off your lazy butts and type Skynet right in there. There it is again. Thank you, Matt. Skynet. Okay? And later in life, we'll look back on this ironically.
Skynet Day or something? Like what?
Well, every day is Skynet Day now. I mean, when the AI is out in the populace, determines we're a threat. These will be the only jokes I make. It's actually really cool that we're doing AI. And then also, of course, AFKT. Lycan has been supporting us for a while. Dan's been drinking it. You guys have been buying it. Thank you all so much. He's a small sponsor, but he's part of our community, and gosh darn it, we like him, and Dan likes the tea.
It's really good. It's really good. I drink it pretty much every day.
Yeah.
I drink a cup of it. It's delicious.
And before I turn over to Dan to start taking us away on a talk about AI and the amazing thing that's going on this year, a couple of quick like house things. And then I actually kind of blanked on. Oh, just a reminder for the Patreon questions: keep them 300 words or less. We are still transitioning to like sifting through them and looking for good ones. They can still be funny. Just make sure they're funny. But we tried to make this really, really clear. And then a guy still wrote a novella as a question, but he's a. Anyways, so just try to keep that pretty short.
That was the best
Did you
question
see
I ever
that?
heard, by the way. When I was listening to that,
Yeah.
like the question started and I was like falling asleep. And then like when, unbeknownst to me, you were about halfway through, I just started to
Oh, yeah.
laugh. I'm like, oh my God, this is out of control.
The best part about the
Like,
question was it evolved like 17
Eating
times.
eggs or like,
Yeah.
I don't even know.
It was an amazing question, but we appreciate that you guys take the time to do that. But please don't take the time to do that. And then last but not least, I want to reiterate one more thing too. Cobra will be doing 24-hour turnarounds on the VOD, so it's still a bit of a transition thing for all of us. But it's so that Cobra can be a human being and not have like a 9-hour day every Wednesday. It's important that everybody enjoys this content. So that's it.
For the record, I voted against Cobra being allowed to be a human being, but very,
Maybe soon he can be replaced by something that is not a human being.
The time is coming.
Soon.
That'll be crazy. And one last thing, just to put this out there too, because it is every day that I get asked by about 10 people, when is the next Pylon show? We have a website, and people spend a lot of time making this a beautiful website. It's just thepylonshow.com, and it shows the previous episodes, the future episodes. A lot of times that can get answered there. If we haven't announced our guests, it's because we don't have them yet. So it's 1 year in, guys, and I'm still saying this stuff. My dream is that it's by about year 3 that I no longer have to say these things. So let's just help me out. And there we go. Dan?
Here, if we are not live, there will be a countdown timer right up here. It says now live. There'll be a countdown timer. If for some reason you don't know what time it is, you can just go to our website and check.
Or you can do it at my channel, and it'll tell you it's in 292 years, 3 months, 8 days, and 23 hours. Which is...
Perfect.
All right, Dan, go ahead, buddy.
Okay. Well, for anyone who is confused as to what's going on, you've been living under a rock, but DeepMind, who have kind of mastered chess and Go to the utmost, have unveiled Alpha Star this past week. TLO and I were both there. TLO was actually the first human pro gamer to play against Alpha Star. He did get defeated 5-0. Mana then flew in a week later to play, got defeated 5-0. We had this wonderful event in London to have this all unveiled. A lot of information was released, all the replays and things like this.
Dan, I want to stop you real quick. It's unveil. The next time you say unveil, I'm gonna fall over and die. To unveil something is to stop it from being veal, and
it's like when a cow grows up, it is
because
unveiled.
that's cool and unusual, right?
the first time I was gonna be the polite caster that you are with Tasteless, and like let it go. Then you kept saying unveil, and I'm like, I gotta stop it now. Okay, go ahead, buddy. Go ahead.
Is it really unveil?
It's unveil.
It is.
Unveil.
Because I know what a veil is. I don't know.
Well, veal is literally like a young calf that's not allowed to develop muscles and is then later eaten. So, I mean, you could unveil something, but that's like you walking around a small cow and like trying to get it to.
Like, time to work out, little cow. I'm gonna unveil you.
All right.
And then when I'm done getting it to have muscle mass, I can unveil the unveil.
We're so stupid.
All right.
Okay, go ahead. Let's talk about robots.
Thank you for coming, Jeff. You have a good flight. Anyways, I think that this is a great group of people to kind of talk about what happened, unpack it, and discuss. I've seen a lot of people talking. It was really fun watching the build-up once they announced that there was going to be a DeepMind thing, because it was like only announced at the last second, and seeing what people were guessing it would be and how wrong basically every human was. And then there's been like a real mix of impressions from people since within the StarCraft community, at least since this occurred. The first person that I actually want to, because I don't actually know your point of view on this, Jeff.
Yep.
What do you think about this the Alpha Star thing that occurred?
So I find the whole concept extremely fascinating, and I thought it was fascinating, and I won't get too far ahead of myself, but just to give a little bit of a sense of the answer. When I watched it, I became more interested because I really felt like you could see. I don't think personality is the right word, but definitely like it was more than what we've seen, right? Like when you play against the computer, you don't feel like you're playing against artificial intelligence. You feel like you're playing against like an algorithm, like something pretty dumb, something that like will just do things. It's not really responding. Whereas this thing was thinking on some level, and it's still not like sci-fi levels of like, oh my god, it's thought into the future. You know, it's not like that, but to watch it execute ideas and concepts and strategies, and then I know everyone's talking about this, I love, even though I don't think it's as big of a deal as some people are making it, the oversaturation thing, but its own take on stuff. I was hoping that would happen like it did for Go, and even Dota, when they had an AI playing in Dota, it like actually changed the meta for them too. I don't know enough about it to speak to it, so hopefully someone doesn't. Well, people jump down my throat no matter what I do, but anyways, that stuff's just very interesting, and I loved it. I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree. And the probe thing is something that some pros have been kind of fighting back against. But Tilo, can you talk a little bit about it now that you've had a week?
Absolutely. Yeah. So to me, it's extremely fascinating what they have so far, right? I agree with Jeff. It's so different from anything we've seen before, because most things before were just bots. They would execute a certain algorithm. They would always act in the same way, but DeepMind is basically thinking. And what I think is much more impressive than most people give it credit for is the way it plays isn't just. So the community was very hung up on the fact that it had very high APM and really good micro. But I think what's really impressive about it is that it still makes those decisions, right? Like even the micro it does is not hard scripted into it. It has to. There's still decision making involved, even on the smallest level. And I think what I think is really cool is that AlphaStar so far, I think, has mastered a certain aspect of StarCraft, and I think it hasn't really mastered the full game yet. But the builds it plays, it executes very well and knows what to do with it. But it still needs to become better to spread out and really play the full game of StarCraft, and I think there's so much more we're going to see in the future. So I that's what I'm excited for. That right now I think this is only the infancy of what is gonna be, right? Like people kind of take this as, some people I think this is it, but it's gonna go way further than that, I believe.
And just kind of an open question to everyone here. You guys jump at any point. This isn't just Artosis asks everyone questions in a row. What is everyone's kind of impression about this? Because I feel like Reddit was, like the Reddit community was a little bit negative in a lot of ways. Some people were like, "Oh, this is really exciting and interesting." I got to agree with Jeff. For me personally, it was like, "Oh my god!" Like we have millions of humans that have played StarCraft. And then we have this other thing that has played StarCraft that now we can look at that and be like, okay, this is basically an alien brain and how it looks at it. So that in and of itself is so useful, no matter how good the micro is. So I'm endlessly fascinated by this. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's really the key to it. I think the way that people are looking at it is looking at it from a human perspective, which is it's doing things that I mechanically can't do, therefore it's cheating, and I'm not interested, or it's cheating. But that's not the hard part. Like we always knew that a bot could do that. Like teaching it to micro well or micro fast and be accurate, of course it could do that. But it was the decision making and how does it arrive at strategies that are like that it's come up with on its own. Why is it making decisions that it's making? Things like that are actually the more interesting part, because the micro was always going to be relatively easy to do, but teaching it to play a coherent game, like the hard part is convincing it to mine minerals, spend resources, plan for the future. That's what's hard for like a machine agent to do. But the micro, yeah, people are fixated on it, and of course it can lean on that, but that's not the interesting part.
You have to remember though, EnderSword, is that we have exposed to like bots for
Right.
like every day. So we were like, oh, that micro is like, we've seen that micro 1,000 times. For most people, they haven't seen like the level of micro being demonstrated. So they're like, oh, of course this is cheating. So
yeah, exactly.
But that's a big difference, right? Because even all those bots that have amazing micro would come nowhere close to being able to beat a really good player.
Absolutely.
Because they're not making those decisions. They're not planning. They're just either following a script like we've seen pretty much up till now, or they're just making decisions that are really bad. But this one actually shows priority. It shows that it has a game plan from start to finish. It's really executing what it's trying to do. And you could tell, like, one of the biggest things is that it's aware of when it's winning, and it just goes and kills you. Like, it knows when it's killed enough that it's over.
I like the even just what it represents. It's a little bit like a couple of scenes from like Jurassic Park where you're watching, you know, the weird scientist guys like watching, like, come on, Velociraptor, out of the egg, you know, a little bit. It's like breaking out. You can see it making weird human choices, which I know, again, for you guys, you've seen a lot of AI, obviously on a lower scale, but still, it's not as interesting. For me, this was my first foray into it, so it was really impressive. But also, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's interesting. It's almost a social commentary, because I talked to some drunk Europeans at Home Story Cup, which, before you stop me, yes, I know, drunk Europeans, I mostly disregard them entirely, but sometimes they say some interesting things. And there was a couple that were kind of asking about this, and they were talking about how they didn't like it. Like, it made them uncomfortable, the idea, because they were like, StarCraft is this huge human expression. You can see personality in it. You can see human triumph, right? Because it's more actions than we could ever do. That's why they cap out the AI. It's information we don't have that you're making instinctual calls off of, or you're doing it off of like repetitive games and you're making predictions. It's very human, right? So for them, and I don't say I agree with this, but I thought it was interesting to hear their discomfort. Bringing in an AI almost brought in, they were very uncomfortable with it. It was like cheating almost, but it was also like impeding in on something that was kind of private for them or whatever. So again, I think there's gonna be a lot of people that don't agree with that, but there are people who this new age of what we're exploring is very uncomfortable for them, and we're doing it in StarCraft, which I thought was cool in a weird way.
I think the best part of the AI coming into StarCraft is it's going to challenge assumptions about the game. It's going to challenge meta thoughts about the game, and it's just going to bring like the opportunity for players to improve, I think, as it develops new strategies.
And I think you've seen this in the other games too. Like, when AI first came into chess, like engines came in, then all the top chess players were like, no, it's going to play like a computer. It can't beat us, whatever. And that was back in like 1998. And then when it came into Go, it's the same thing, that everyone with their own game, they're like, no, my game is way more complicated than that. You can't beat my game. And then we did. So,
isn't that kind of funny though? Like, thinking about what an AI is, like, one of the things that sticks out to me so hard is that this agent has literally played 200 years of StarCraft. Like, that number, you know, Dan and I brag, we're like 20 years. And when we say, you know, that's a lot. It's 10 times that. And I just did that math in my head, so that's my computation power.
You didn't play 20 years of, exactly. You didn't play 20 years of StarCraft 24/7.
Right.
As close as we could get, but yeah.
Anyways, the point is, like, the numbers, the scale that we're talking about is literally inhuman, obviously. But I think it's funny that, because to me, when a supercomputer comes in, I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Like, how could we ever compete with that? The only thing we have is instinct and, like, you know, the willingness to gamble or make the imperfect decision, which sometimes, ironically, is the better, you know, the correct decision. Yeah. So that's going to be the hang up for a supercomputer. But goddamn, when it starts to learn that people are stupid and sometimes they're right for being stupid, ooh, baby, it's gonna be tough.
What I think is pretty cool, though, is we're bringing up chess, and chess, obviously, AI is really good at chess and usually beating humans for a while now. But even in chess, a human that plays together with an AI is still usually beating a pure AI.
Yes.
And so I think that goes to show what humans still can do. And that we're still quite far from artificial intelligence. But like,
Johnny, Daria, are you talking like Johnny Mnemonic? You want like AI-assisted humans that we're talking about?
Well, I mean, that's kind of where we're moving into.
It is the type of thing that people are using, like, out in the world too. Like, people use AIs to inform like stock market decisions and stuff, but they don't actually they do to some extent let them just do it. Machine learning, yeah, exactly. So, but they always are human supervised and human overridden, because if you just let it go, it will lose you billions of dollars.
You know where we're getting with this, but I'm sorry. This is supposed to be Dan driving this, but I'm too excited. That's exactly what they do in the fucking 40K universe, you guys. They don't trust complete robots to run anything because they actually have a robot rebellion in their history. So every machine, every artificial intelligence is linked to a biological body because they don't trust it.
Well,
we're heading to 40K.
BrownBear, you had you did a wonderful video. I thought that was some of the best analysis that I've seen so far on Alpha Star, and you definitely had some pretty strong opinions. Can you speak to that a little bit about what you thought about the whole demonstration?
Sure. I kind of agree with Dario that this project is still in its infancy. So I'm really looking forward to the next demonstration. They did a lot of stuff that I found very exciting. Like, I thought that the ability for Alpha Star to know when it needs stalkers in its mineral line and when it can move out and it can just defend based on weapons, like, I think that's really profound. Like, I think that's the kind of thing that's hard to explicitly program. And then I think one of the reasons people were upset is just, I think if DeepMind had just been maybe a little bit more clear about the fact that this is like, hey, this is just the first demonstration, we're going to do more, we're going to keep working on it and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that would have kind of assuaged a lot of people's concerns.
I think they missed an opportunity too, because for me, in the sci-fi movie, this is like the idiot robot like stumbling out and it like falls over. People are like, ha ha ha, what a stupid robot. But then like in a year, it walks out with like laser cannon hands and it's taken over our satellites. And this is where, you know, I'll spend very little time on this. They should have hired me, because I would have been the idiot that like looks like the pseudo bully, making fun of the robot, and then later it kills me. But they didn't do that. They hired Dan and Rotterdam.
Yeah. Well, I think that maybe part of the thing that rubbed a bunch of StarCraft people the wrong way might have been the way that this, like BrownBear said, the way it was billed in a certain way. Now, on the actual show, I don't feel like it was billed incorrectly. Maybe I didn't host it correctly and say the right things that I should have said to kind of underline what this is, because I think that DeepMind's very aware that this is not the end all, right? They did not play all the matchups. They did not play against Serral and Stats and Maru.
Well, you can't start with Serral though. That would have sucked. You don't do that.
Yeah, no, of course. This is how they did go as well, right? They got the top European player, and I mean that was a very strong player, and kind of went from there. And I think that that's like a good place to test, because you know, you're going to need some tests like that before you go further. But a bunch of the news outlets, kind of the headlines they were using and stuff, because we are in that age of just drive traffic and have these crazy titles on everything. Oh, it just embarrasses like pro gamers or something. So I feel like that might be part of the reason why people looked at parts of this more negatively, because it was like, I think everyone's missing the point as to what's actually going on here.
Yeah. It was viewed as a little bit unfair in the sense that it was 5 games. You didn't really know, like TLO, you didn't even know that it was actually 5 different agents. So you're things like that are they're a little unfair. Like, obviously they're slanting it a bit in that direction. And then people that have been following it from the beginning, like, it's a supervised agent. It's an agent it's not what they originally built that they were going to do. So from people following it from a machine learning point of view, it's not what they said they were going to do, but it's a stepping stone towards.
I just want to point out, but even just to piggyback off of that comment, it's not even just not what they said they wanted to do. It's just they're not there yet. There's a lot of things that they are limited to right now, and the demonstration was set up in the best optimum way to show off what they already have, right? Yeah. Like the idea that the bot used to be Terran, and then they switched it to Protoss because they couldn't get it to stop lifting. And that's
what? Really?
Yeah, the bot in 2017 was like a Terran bot, and then they just couldn't get around the problem of it. Like, it would constantly lift buildings because it thought was the optimum way not to lose, which makes sense from like a bot perspective, because it's like, it's rewarded for winning in 30 minutes or whatever that the metric is, and so it would just lift, and it would beat an AI, easy AI, because it technically considered itself winning, and they couldn't get it to stop, so they just,
Oh my god, that's interesting.
I think they could have like gotten it to stop, but that might have been like an early iteration problem. I think they just randomly picked Protoss at some point. I don't think necessarily that was like really what stopped them entirely from using Terran.
Yeah.
Well, Protoss, it makes it simpler as well. It breaks the game into a much simpler demonstration.
I resent that
It's
fact.
literally less units, and it's better. It's less units, and it's more exploitable micro units.
Yeah.
In a way, like it really simplifies the game a lot to do a PvP. But it sounds like they have trained all matchups on all maps, and then they chose the one that they're most successful at. So they did do the whole process, but this is the one that they've had the largest impact with.
They mentioned as well that they're running into some engineering challenges with the StarCraft 2 client. Like they weren't even able to physically build Archons until a few months ago. So I think that's something they're dealing with as well.
Yeah, there's a few problems with all the races. They explained to me Cirque is really difficult because at some point the AI just couldn't understand a burrowed unit because of the Blizzard API. So it just wouldn't know what a burrowed unit is, and then if it doesn't know what's going on in the game, it obviously can't properly play it. It didn't know what hallucinations were. I think even when Mana and I played, so they kind of told me in advance, like, oh, please just don't make hallucinations.
That's got to be a really hard one, because you can either like a cloaked unit, apparently, like if it sees a DT, it just knows it's there. Like it's not, you can't like blur it or something. Like it either knows it's there or it doesn't.
That's only a recent. That's in the recent.
And that's a new one too. Before it didn't know at all. But yeah, a burrowed unit, it doesn't know what that is. A hallucination, again, it either knows it's fake or it doesn't know it's fake.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't know it's fake, it doesn't know that there's a possibility that it's fake. So it basically they designed Idra.
Well, that's one joke. The other joke is just like the way its brain works is just so literal, which was kind of Idra's fault or problem, actually.
Well, to be fair, it's an improved Idra because it doesn't leave games. So no matter how far behind it is, it will stay.
Yeah.
Wow.
To talk about the detection, by the way, I think it's fine that it can instantly see a cloaked unit. The problem only arose that it also could see the whole map. So it would instantly know. As soon as you have that client that is actually using a camera, I'm pretty fine with that, because most programmers in many situations would notice a cloaked unit if they're looking at it.
Yeah.
As soon as the agent has to look at it with its camera and then knows it's there, I think that's fine. Because obviously you can't like put in like some weird probability that it's going to see it or not. I think that makes things really awkward.
That was the part that was, I wouldn't say disappointing for me personally, because I didn't have high expectations. Like, it's just amazing to see where they're at even now. I guess as a StarCraft player, you can kind of appreciate how ridiculous it is that a computer is trying to make these decisions to do this. But when it's APM, and we talked a little bit about this, it did go over like 1,800, and they were supposed to be capped out at like 300 or 400, whatever it was.
So can I just speak about that APM? As they explained to me, they have an APM cap, and you have a certain APM cap over 60 seconds, let's say 200 APM. And then every 30 seconds, it's allowed 250 APM, and every 15 seconds, 300 APM. So within that frame, it only has that max APM. The problem was, I think they might not have had a hard cap for like really small time frames. So within 1 second, its APM could spike to 1,500. And then it would just not use as many actions in the next seconds to like basically balance out how much APM.
Yeah, it learns to budget
like an average.
But I think the whole spirit of what they're trying to do is replicate human movement.
Yeah, but
that's not human movement, you guys.
Yeah, it wasn't perfect.
Not even close. I try to hold myself back from 1 million APM, but every once in a while I slide into 500,000. It's like, oops, sorry guys, but you know. And when I heard that it saw the whole map, that's also cheating. Like they were supposed to just be capped out on seeing the screen. So it was too bad to hear that too.
Go ahead, BrownBear.
Oh, I also noticed that like for humans, as your actions per minute go up, your precision generally goes down. But I don't think that they incorporated that into their model yet.
I heard that there was some misclicking, but obviously I don't think that there would be very much, but there was some amount of span of misclicking because these agents, if I'm not mistaken, did learn from replays as well. So there's like a little bit of mimicking there, but I mean, definitely from some of the games that we saw, like, I guess specifically the games against Mana, I felt like the micro was really like superhuman, right? Obviously there's like scenarios in which it seemed like it had a very hard time, like ramps and chokes and stuff. And like against force field, it had kind of a hard time. There was definitely times from both TL and Mono where force fields, ramps, chokes worked against the AI overall. But I guess every like completely flat situation, like if it's flat and open, that's where it just completely dominated micro-wise. That was my impression.
Nice.
All right, moving on.
That's it. Good show, guys.
All right, we did it.
I want to actually make a comment though. I know a lot of people were overall excited, and from AlphaStar and DeepMind in general. I admit I was a little disappointed personally, mainly because at first I was really excited, and then when we kind of broke down what was happening, it was, you know, with mainly the micro, but more or less that there wasn't any sort of consistent memory between the different matches, that they were all separate agents. And so new strategies, we weren't going to really see any new strategy. And that's what I was hoping for the most, like, especially from watching AlphaGo. Like, pardon?
See it evolve throughout the series.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was what I was like, when it was unveiled, that's what I was really personally excited about, seeing new strategies coming out of it from StarCraft perspective. Like AlphaGo, I watched the AlphaGo stuff. And, you know, you saw opportunities where things that just didn't make sense came out to be really awesome. And we saw a little bit of that, but I feel like was that it more replaying the optimum strategies that it's learned from the Alpha Star League.
It also comes down to how it learned. So because this was supervised learning to begin with, then followed up by reinforcement learning, what it essentially learned is to mimic a human start and then move towards the center. So essentially what it was doing in a PvP is it made stalkers. Why? Because stalkers are not good or bad against anything. They're just versatile. So it just learned, if I make a versatile thing that I can exploit micro with, then I'm fine most of the time. And I think that's kind of where it ended up. Whereas in the Go situation, and where I hope they're going with this, is in unsupervised learning, where you never showed examples, you just let it learn from scratch, it will do things that we've never even thought of.
Yeah,
I think that's the end goal, right? Is that it ends up just being you entered into a game, have at it.
That's the idea. Where they're going with the whole DeepMind thing is supposed to be general AI, that I set up an AI that I can tell it a brand new game and it will figure it out. And I don't have to do anything. That's the concept.
I think one thing I noticed with the Stalkers as well is that it's a unit that doesn't necessarily is very easily punished. So it's much easier to make decisions because you don't have to make very long-term decisions. With Stalkers, you can always disengage. So it's easier not to make a mistake, right? If you make an army that is slow and has to move out the map, there's much more long-term planning involved, and that's a lot harder for the AI still to actually make that long-term planning. I think it's very good at the short term yet, but I'm 100% sure if like Mana would have had more games playing against the agent, there would have been many ways in long-term planning to break it still.
Yeah, I agree. There's also the fact that, again, the way it learns tends to be incremental. So once it's decided on a strategy, like all stalkers, if it plays against an all stalker bot that is like, I'm going to put in 1 or 2 immortals and that might be good, but 1 or 2 immortals in a stalker versus stalker blink battle are probably bad because they get left behind. They can't disengage. But it turns out 12 immortals was probably good, but it never gets to 12 because 1 or 2 sucked.
So, I'm not sure if that's 100% true. Like I definitely, like, we didn't really see it much in the matches, but I was assured by them that the bots definitely react and do make pretty significant tech switches if the game does evolve in a certain way. I think the demonstration wasn't perfect because it was just 5 games and neither Mana and I really knew what we were getting into. So the games are relatively basic, I would say. I'd love to see how those agents play if, you know, now that Mana and I have a little bit of a better idea how they're playing and we could play longer games against it, where like we would not just get defeated because we don't know what the hell is going on. It was really difficult playing against the agents. Like usually in StarCraft, when you're going up against an opponent, you have kind of an idea of what their style is. You have at least an idea how good they are. We had no idea. So I think that's why the games were pretty simple. If you just play against an opponent, you don't know at all. It's very difficult. But I think they are capable of switching into other units if it's really beneficial. But I'm not 100% sure because we haven't seen it all yet.
Yeah, they kind of released that on their webpage. If anyone hasn't looked, they had like a unit distribution thing. And they were like, on average, these agents, like all of them, make 50 stalkers a game, or like 2 immortals, 2 void rays. Like there was averages out, and they tended to favor, I think it was stalker, zealot. Yeah, exactly.
Well, a lot of it is
disruptor and carrier.
It takes in the data, and it must have taken in that, you know, that was the best and optimum unit composition after playing 200 years of StarCraft.
I was just surprised by how often they used like the average statistic. because like, for example, they mentioned that they had like a rewards component where like agents would have preferences, kind of like humans. And they mentioned that the bot that built a lot of disruptors against TLO, like it leveraged this reward mechanic. But like, you don't really see that in a graph that just includes averages.
Yeah.
So I feel like that, like that was interesting that they built that rewards component, and their graph doesn't really reflect that.
What is the rewards component exactly? I'm not clear on that.
So the agents have an incentive to, like, they can say you get more like virtual points if you make disruptors, and then the agents get more points for winning. So winning is still more important, but they're basically almost given like a food source. Like they get happy if they get to make disruptors and then also win the game, and then they want to do that more, like to simplify
so
it.
this is how they make it try out different things.
Yeah, if you didn't incentivize it, it would never do it.
It would just always go for stalkers.
AIs, one thing about computers is they're the laziest thing in the world. Like they will take the shortest possible path.
Well, efficient is the word, right?
Yeah,
which is
efficient.
beautiful because that's how evolution
Lazy is a little
works.
bit of a different connotation, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a little bit confused though about this, right? Because I mean, I've watched a lot of stuff on AlphaZero and AlphaGo, and I mean, I've been trying my best to understand AlphaStar quite a bit. But how do you go from this situation where it has learned from human replays and then make it learn just by playing itself? Because like, yeah, I don't know how does that work, and because I want to get into how that might end up looking and what kind of games we're gonna, like BrownBear brought up before the show about you know, the different types of strategies that might disappear or something if this type of thing could occur. But I'm just, how do you jump from one to the other? I guess I'm like missing a part of this evolution in my head right now, because how do we go back, undo the replays, and have AlphaStar learn the game by itself?
It's hard. So the thing that makes
it's
it
okay
hard,
if you guys don't know. I'm just
so it's hard, but I'll say what's complicated about it. So in chess or Go or something with like, even though there's tons and tons of moves in chess, at the very beginning there's like 12 moves. So it can pick one of those 12 possible moves, and it will eventually get into something that looks like a game. And same in Go, you can put the piece anywhere, but eventually you're going to get into something that looks like a game. In StarCraft, if you literally tell it nothing and it just, here's the game, then why should it even mine? Why won't it just scatter its workers randomly? Why does it do anything? So there's very few opening moves that are sensible. So getting it to mine, build like a depot or a pylon, getting it to scout a little bit, getting to build a barracks or something, that it's very prescriptive what you have to do at the very beginning. So if you try and teach it to learn completely on its own, it may never learn because it never stumbles on the first 3 steps that are required to even play a game. So it just dies and it has no idea why it died. So it becomes very, very difficult. Or they just sit there. Like if you get 2 unlearned things to play chess, well, they have to make moves. Eventually one of them is going to win. This one could literally just sit there forever. So you have to like stimulate it to do something, and that's actually very difficult to do.
There's also a couple of 2 areas too. Like there's getting the API in StarCraft to the right place as well as having the right equipment. So the tensor processing units, and so there's even just not even just the technical limitations, but there's physical limitations as well before when those are ready to be able to get to that stage.
Yeah. And this too, going back to that reward thing, is why you have to give it intermediate rewards. When you try and teach it something, like ideally, if you get it to play chess, you would rather just give it a cookie if it wins the game and not give it a cookie if it loses. But in this, it's so complex, you have to give it micro rewards to say, you mined, good job. You killed the thing, good job. You have to incentivize it. But the problem is the incentives may not be in line with winning the game. So you're teaching it to do the wrong thing, even though you think it's right. So if you say killing units, like there are cases where you incentivize it to do something weird. So killing units gets you points. So why don't I just contain my opponent on 5 bases to let him build as many units as possible, and I kill them, but if I still win. So then you teach it to play like in a Velo game or something, and it just plays like a 3-hour long game where it kills like swarm host locusts or something. So you don't want it to do that. Like there's ways that it will follow the incentives to the letter of the law, and it may not be what you want it to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
It was really interesting because I think that's very human too. Sorry to interrupt you, Dan, but the team was telling me at some point they had an issue where agents would try to delay losing as much as possible, and the way the agents learn to do that is by scrolling, because scrolling is an action, and suddenly their program was just running really slowly and all those games were taking forever, and it's because those agents didn't want to lose because losing is bad, and they just started scrolling all over the place, so the games like machine perspective would take forever until they lose. So there's a lot of like interesting things that they would just procrastinate,
which is playing within the boundaries of the mechanics of the game. So I love that, because it's like, technically that's true. Technically that is how you would do it. But that's like the morality and ethics of gaming that, you know, is a whole nother tier to this, right? Like it wasn't too long ago Scarlett had a situation where she could report someone because their skin they were using was actually technically illegal, but she waited until she lost and then was like, hey, they were on a bad skin, actually we got to replay that. And technically within the boundaries of the game, that she ended up getting the regame. Of course for us, we're like, well, that's dirty as hell, right? But it's fun. The computer's just like, oh, I'm losing, okay, I guess I'll just bog down their machine so they can't actually do anything.
And that's how they think a lot. They think very much like, what is the most optimum situation? What makes the most sense here, right?
And we had, I forget who it was, but one of the ProBots designers, like a scripted AI, told it to reduce, like they gave it points if it reduces the enemy army, but it didn't know the difference between killing it and not being able to see it. So whenever it saw an enemy army, it would stim away from it and then put it in the fog of war, and it would count it as killing it.
Oh my god!
ProBots, we see a lot of weird behavior.
Yeah,
it's fun talking about this too, because there are some misconceptions, at least for me. Again, as someone that like just passively digested this information, I didn't like dive deep into it. But right now, the general consensus that I'm getting is that it's very much so humans manufacturing thought into a program, right? And then from there, it might adapt and evolve. Whereas before, if you told me that there was an AI learning StarCraft and it was grinding out 200 years of StarCraft, I would have thought it's closer to what I'm now learning is the impossibility, which is literally just a program that's just like freely expressing itself inside of StarCraft and learning on its own. Now they're like, no. Hallucination or lifting buildings does not mean you just keep lifting forever. So it's kind of interesting because we're at that ground floor, right? Because I think where we do eventually get is to a place where it is DeepMind or it's AlphaStar 2.0 or whatever it's going to be. It's an agent that literally inside the game is interpreting optimal strategies. It knows how to win. It knows what boundaries to play within, and it's not making completely foreign decisions like hallucinations equal I killed it, so I win, right?
The question is like, how many years are we away from an AI actually being able to really learn StarCraft on its own? Because if you look at how many actions are there in StarCraft at the beginning of the game, it's a ridiculously long number that probably doesn't even fit in the universe. Like literally, if you would write it out, it doesn't fit in the universe, because if you look at every single pixel and every single even basic action you can take with one probe, like, and then if you compound those throughout the game, it's to even start having a single base. If you would just learn that by doing random actions, as Ender was explaining in chess, like I don't think it's possible from a computational perspective.
They had a cool chart at the beginning of the show where it's like in Go there's like 361 moves that you can do, and in StarCraft at any moment there's 10 to the 26 approximately moves. So it's just like, obviously not all of these are good moves.
I love it.
You know, all these sayings that the chess community has about possible games where it's like more than the atoms in the universe or something. It's like,
that's nothing.
That's baby play compared to StarCraft.
And I got a minor point of pride with that. I was a little bit worried that they could write a program that comes and solves StarCraft inside of a year or two, you know. And this tells me that Skynet is coming, but it's going to be our kids or grandkids that have to worry about it. So that's good for me.
I think we're far away from it. I think, and that's the part that not irked me, but I was a little disappointed, is that the demonstration was, and I don't think DeepMind did this on purpose at all. Is that, you know, it came across as like this is the final product, even though this is like they're really far away from the final product. It is just a demonstration,
Right.
but the way it was presented was very kind of felt like PR
Yeah.
buzz.
You know what's tough
Well,
about that though? I don't disagree with you. I feel like getting a little bit away from the topic, but I find this interesting as well. You kind of have to, right? Like you cannot,
Of course,
you cannot buzz kill. You cannot come out really tepid. You can't come out with like, who from the audience wants to play Alpha Star? You know, you got to have. You need pro gamers. You need these fantastic hosts. You need a big stage, and you need it to sound like. I do like personally. I agree with you. They should have been more clear about, hey, like this is our first live demonstration. We've been working on this, but we're very much so in the infancy. But I think if you say that, not as much news picks it up because the potential for this is gigantic. Like this was already that video that was just playing. It's got 900,000 views. It's got almost 1 million views on it, and it's literally Mana getting slammed in the face by a machine. Like that's
Yeah.
you
know,
if Mana was naked running through a park in Poland, that video wouldn't get a third of those views. But here he is losing to a calculator, and that's getting 1 million views. So it's
I don't even think that bothers me. It's the fact that I feel like they blew their like digital load in the sense that there was now when he plays again,
Yeah.
you know, the media will be like, well,
I think they just needed to say at the very end, they needed to say like, okay, this is the stepping stone. We conquered this stepping stone. And they needed to sign off with like, the next step is this. Look forward to this in the future.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like
We kind of did. We
Right,
kind
yeah.
of did talk about that at the end of the show, though, when I asked them like, "What's next? Are you going to try the other race and stuff?" I mean, obviously, they can't just fully commit
don't know.
there on
Yeah.
TV as to yes, we're going to beat Cyril this year. It's like, well, we don't actually know how this will turn out. Like,
And I kind of disagree. I think media will still pick it up a lot if they make
Yeah.
a big, like, you know how many articles have been in the media about the Voyager probe finally leaving our solar system. Like, I think it has left the solar system like 20 times by now.
Yes, yeah.
And we found water on Mars like 1 billion times. And
yeah.
I'm pretty sure, like, I think it's big enough of a deal that like the news cycle will just pick it up.
absolutely. It's a matter of like when AlphaGo beat the top player, right? That was like the pinnacle of it. So I'm just like, where, you know, how does the media discern, you know, Mana from Cyril, right? Like, how do you, to them, I would imagine the general media was like, these are both people, you know.
Well,
like we will.
that's what I got hyped about because you can literally say Cyril, and hopefully, because it's going to be at the end of the year, can still say this. This is the best human player taking on the one of the final iterations of our machine learning AI. That is global scale, gigantic media, and you got to hype that up, right? You can't spend the year toning that down, basically.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I mean, no matter what comes next, I think it'll be really exciting. But if I could turn this to the StarCraft nerdy version of this conversation for a moment, right? Because something that they mentioned during AlphaGo that I thought was so fascinating is it doesn't care how much it wins by, just that it wins. And you guys were talking about this earlier about how like when it realizes it's killed enough or whatever, it's far enough ahead, it'll move in and kill you. And other things might not even be done that well, things that we would consider finishing well. It doesn't care as long as it gets that win. And I mean, yeah, it's like Jeff, you said it's like trying to be efficient. I guess so, right? Like as long as you're getting that victory. But something that BrownBear brought up before we started the show was, you know, some of the more beautiful games. Are we like, will this ever, BrownBear, can you just actually word it as you worded? I don't want to put words in your mouth about that thing.
Oh, sure. So before this cast, I was watching the games between Gumiho and Su in the GSL finals because I feel like Gumiho is a really interesting player because for me, when I watched him, I never felt like he was playing Terran the correct way. I just thought that he was doing what he found was fun, and that's what motivated him. And then he just tried to find a way to make it work. And then when he won the GSL, like he just figured out a way to make his unique style like work very well for playing mech and for playing against Zerg players. And so one of the things that I wonder about is like, will AlphaStar ever discover, you know, like this way of playing the game where you kind of have to lose for a really long time, not because that's the optimal thing to do, but because it's quote unquote fun. But eventually after losing for a while, you get to the point where you develop this totally new way of playing Terran. So I was just wondering if it would ever discover that.
I think that's really interesting. I think it's interesting what would happen if you had a StarCraft 2 programmer in the DeepMind team help them pick incentives for the agents to do certain things, I think then we could probably develop really interesting styles. But I don't think it would be able by itself to come up with stuff like that. But it's really hard to tell because a lot of times they don't know themselves necessarily why an agent is doing certain things. Like that's one of the difficult things about machine learning. That behavior emerges and it emerges because it's successful with it, but you don't necessarily know if it's good. Even if it's winning, you don't know if that's good StarCraft, right? So it's really complicated.
What I like about it is it would take incentivizing because it would have to devalue raw performance in favor of tricking or doing something that catches your opponent off guard, which I would imagine, not being an AI expert at all, is not something that's in the value system of an AI. So you literally have to teach it that you're going to do something pseudo suboptimal, but you're going to do that because they're not expecting that, and it's going to create such an incredible chasm between what they were expecting and what you're doing that is the victory in and of itself. But to answer like kind of the root of your thing, what I like is maybe it doesn't. Maybe it literally is only capable of doing what it thinks is the absolute best. There is a lot of StarCraft players and fans over the years that is StarCraft to them. Anything else, anything that you're doing to be weird and cheesy and tricky is like this suboptimal, gross version of this pure, perfect game. And one of the hosts on our channel has gotten so mad about this concept so many times that literally you can watch him stream and he will yell and scream about it every single day. But I pick on Dan, but he's not alone. There's a lot of StarCraft players that to play perfect is the dream of StarCraft, and the AI represents the physical manifestation of that ability to possibly happen.
Well, okay, so kind of going back to the Gumiho thing, because this actually made me think of something, right? If you look at, I almost feel like to find these games, like how Gumiho plays, for instance, you would have to dumb down, like, for instance, micro ability of the AI. Because now that I'm thinking about it with the Gumiho game for reference, and the fact that it's just trying to win the way that it knows how to win, it reminds me kind of Bjorn. Like, to be perfectly honest, right? I mean, if you watch like Bjorn TVP, for instance, right? There was like when adepts were a big thing, Bjorn would just, I can't believe you're playing video. So like Bjorn, for instance, right? He'll play StarCraft in a way and you look at it and you're like, okay, Bjorn ends up winning this game, but he'll lose like every SCV and then use his micro that's better than everyone's micro in the world and go kill his opponent. Right. And it's like kind of a close game, but he wins. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there you have a victory. Right. But I guess when you look at the way that DeepMind played this series overall, it was like very Stalker heavy, very Phoenix heavy, like very microable units where its control was good enough that it knew it could kind of enforce a victory. Whereas with a human, like you'll see a variety of styles. And like, for instance, someone who doesn't have Bjorn's micro won't be able to use certain strategies. Like when he was using Master Reaper all the time and kept getting it nerfed, you'd see Maru, the second best micro player in the world, do the same strategy, lose 2 games in a row, and then have to switch strategies and then win the best of 5. Like that's actually something that happened, whereas Bjorn wouldn't lose a game with that strat. So I almost feel like Bjorn is closer to Alpha Star in a way, right? So maybe if you downed the micro ability enough that it couldn't rely on its micro, I don't know.
No,
is this
I hear you. I disagree though. I think what we have is like a holy trinity opportunity here. We always talk about like Boxer, the creative player, I Love Uve, the mechanical player, etc. I think what's amazing about the AI is it represents, if we get there, you don't need to dumb down anything. You don't need to. Imagine Bjorn with better decision making and still the perfect micro. Imagine Gumiho with the micro of Bjorn. Why would we ever say, well, let's dumb down the micro to make a Gumiho computer? No, fuck it, make them both.
But the way it learns, it might not be possible to become that
to
player.
get there.
See, that's the box you guys are thinking in. That I have it might not be possible.
But it's also a matter. So there's 2 problems to it. There's getting from point A to point B. So it may be that developing that strategy is just not possible because it loses so much. You can try and incentivize it, but it may be just a bridge too far. But the other thing is, a lot of times the really novel strategies in StarCraft for humans work because the other player doesn't see that very often. And if that was if that became the meta, it would be destroyed. So something not only has to get to this weird, say a mech type build or a weird whatever, but that then has to be stable. So that build that it got to really weirdly then has to beat 5,000 other agents that have 200 years to practice against it.
I think
And that's really hard.
I think what they did though is they would value an agent that was able to beat the first ranked agent, even if it wouldn't beat a lot of agents, they would still take note of that. So they can see some of like the interesting styles that are specialized. They don't completely drown, but of course you would still most of the top agents would be more standardized. And I actually talked to the co-lead of the project, David Silver, and he agreed with me that it might be exciting to go forward to lower the APM, because they did notice that the agents would, tunnel vision a little bit towards Stalkers and Phoenix and that kind of stuff. And maybe if they lower the APM, that alone will create more strategic diversity we're seeing in the agents.
This is so rife with jokes about Protoss, by the way, but just keep going. I know you're being so passive aggressive, Dario. It's fine. It's good.
I'm being completely genuine.
Yeah. It picked Protoss because of the simple micro units, and it's just gravitated towards Stalkers and Zealots. If we lower its APM, it might even be better. I'm like, that's me. That's you just.
We want to go from Little Bow to Elfie. That's.
I wonder. It never cannon rush, right?
It did. It did that weird. It didn't cannon rush, but it did that weird proxy build outside the base in the natural, which I thought was actually the most interesting strategy because it was based on deception. And it was the first time. This is the thing that I was most interested to see if the AI could do. And I asked in their AMA, and it did other examples of this, where it would actually build something and cancel it once it's scouted. And I would always wondered if it was capable of spending resources to deceive an opponent. And in this case, it put a pylon in Mana's base to deceive him and to occupy his.
We don't know that that's to deceive.
Well, we don't know that it's why, but it was the effect of it.
So that game is really interesting, and I'm not 100% sure if I'm like agreeing with you there, because what it wanted to do is it was trying to gas steal, right? Yeah. But it couldn't because mana blocked it, and then it made a pylon there instead. So it almost feel like it kind of broke, because it might have learned, if I make a building about there, I win games. So that might be an artifact that it actually just
it helps.
It may not know why.
It got its shield batteries up because of that, which is insane.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know if you watched the replay, but after that probe leaves the base, it actually for a second tries starting an assimilator at the third base of mana.
That's dumb though.
Somewhere in it was still like, if I make an assimilator, I win games.
Yeah.
But the thing was, it didn't start the assimilator. It just queued it and then canceled it.
Interesting.
And then made a pylon instead. So that's such a human interaction. It's interesting. Yeah.
Tilo, I don't know if you rewatched the replays that you played against it, but it built a Stargate against you and canceled it, if I recall correctly. And then that you never saw, and it canceled it, and then it rebuilt it.
Yeah. The same for the Stargate, right? It canceled the Stargate and then made another Stargate behind it later. Yeah. So it
wasn't the right time. He was like, nope, it's not the right time.
Well, it was used to playing against smarter players than me, and it was just
aren't we all though?
We've all played against players where you try to deceive them, but they don't understand, and then you lose the game because of that. It happens a lot to me on NA ladder right now.
That's how I win every single game that I play.
I'm not pulling any weird moves anymore on that ladder because it just always backfires.
You know what? We just heard is Dario's getting less creative on the NA ladder, and that's a sad thing.
No, it's true. Like I'm shoehorned into being a standard player on NA because if I'm trying to do some weird shit, it just doesn't work against players that don't know how to play StarCraft.
Yeah. It's like too late. They're already doing triple weird shit, so you're in trouble now. That's funny.
I think one thing I wanted to mention too is that when EnderSword and I were doing sort of our breakdown of the videos, that the actual Alpha Star wasn't really making decisions based off of its opponent, whether it was just building its optimum strategy, and would have done it regardless of what was happening. So, one of the things is maybe in the micro, I don't know for sure, but I feel like a lot of the times it was just placing down buildings as it felt it had learned to do, as opposed to, oh, this is what XYZ is doing, I should do this. It was more like
they seem to say too that there are agents that were adaptive that did scout and respond to it, and then there were agents that didn't care. So it seemed to be a mixture. And I think something that can happen with AI too, and I think maybe you never really know exactly what it was thinking because it becomes a bit of a black box. But with an AI, it can have like a border condition where it's like very, very close to something. And if this happens, make a Stargate. But then something very small changes and it's like, okay, don't make the Stargate. And it cancels. But then it goes back and make the Stargate. And then it changes, don't make it. Like, and you see that a lot where it will like, an AI will like dance on the border of attacking and not attacking.
Yeah,
or
and
doing something.
every move that the agent does is a probability based, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes you'll also see really weird things where there's a very low percentage assigned to it just starting an axis and then instantly canceling it, because maybe it had one match where it did that and then one because it canceled the nexus because then it happened to get attacked right after. And every single experience it makes, it'll slightly affect the pool of decisions it makes, right? So there will be some weird artifacts where it like accidentally makes the right decision, but it doesn't know why it made that decision. It just was rewarded for that for the wrong reason.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest thing to know, is that it doesn't know why it's doing anything. It's doing it because it got rewarded for doing it. And it can't explain to you why it did it.
Very much.
I would be afraid.
That's it. Yeah.
What I thought was one of its most profound decisions is, Dan, you pointed this out in your analysis, that like sometimes it would move units across the map, and then sometimes it would like have them move backward, and then have them continue moving forward. And like you kind of ask why does it do that? And I was wondering, like, I wonder if it's like just kind of like the way humans manage their armies, like moving it forward and then checking like, oh, is my army in trouble? Let me move it back a little bit and then move it forward. And like, did it do that because of mimicry, or did it do that because that's just a good way to kind of control your army?
I feel like
there was like well, to be fair, right, there was 3 or 4 games, I can't remember, where I spotted situations like that where to me it looked like it was sweeping the map a little bit. You know, that's not an uncommon thing for a human to do, is to kind of like on your way out, you're like kind of check the sides a little bit to make sure, you know, there's not a little piece of army over there that's going to screw up you leave. Obviously, I don't know how it's thinking or anything, but it seemed, especially there's one time in particular where it was trying to go up one of those ramps that it always has trouble with, right? And instead of sending the units right up, it like circled around, checked there, and then they came up. So it seemed to me like it was figuring that out. I don't know.
Yeah, and yet it wouldn't send its observers out. It would have 6 observers with the army. so who knows?
Gotta keep those alive. DT's.
But what I think is really interesting about the way the strategies for the agents is that it's also very similar to how humans learn StarCraft. They talking about how at the beginning of the learning there's a lot of really, really cheesy agents because that's more simple StarCraft.
Yeah.
And your success rate is very high. At the beginning, they had tons of TT rushes and cannon rushes. And then as that league is running longer, those strategies fall out of favor because they win games initially, but as soon as players become better, they're not very good anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we didn't see a cannon rush, for example, because they probably learned how to hold cannon rushes very easily because they were exposed to so many cannon rushes at the beginning of their careers. So again, there's like all these interesting parallels to how humans approach the game that evolve with the agents, even though they don't have the same understanding as we do, but it's this inherent property of the game that's almost like a universal constant, which is quite interesting to me.
Yeah,
definitely.
I want to hear from you guys just in general, like if this goes again, what would you like to see if DeepMind wants to continue moving forward heavily? Like, what would the next thing that you'd really want to see as an update from DeepMind as far as AlphaStar goes?
So what I think is really important to me and would also be really important to show the strength of artificial intelligence, not to just have a single exhibition match with like 5 matches and then maybe it wins all of them. But I don't think that's even that meaningful yet, because when it gets really interesting to see, to show that you have a stable, versatile agent that a human can sit down, play 100 games and try to figure out how to break it. And then if a human can't break it, If a programmer can't figure out how to beat it, and then it wins consistently, I think that's where they really reach the point where they can say they have cracked StarCraft. Because, you know, again, the main advantage of the agent was that Mana and I had absolutely no idea how it plays. And but the advantage of the human is we learn very quickly. In 10 games, after watching the replays, Mana and I already knew a lot of weaknesses, how to counter it. While the problem of the agent is it learns very slowly relatively. You can feed it a lot more training, of course, but to see not the peak, but not the peak performance, but if it's good actually on average over a long time, I think that's more interesting to me.
For me, what I'd like to see is a persistent memory amongst the games that it plays, because what like Mana and TLO played was like 5 different agents, and I'd like to see one agent that plays 5 games as opposed to individual agents with different or each 5 unique strategies. So that would be important for me.
Which I kind of think is the merging of what Dario said and what you're saying. I think part of the reason they did, well, anyways, I mean, if you play the same agent 5 times, the human should be able to kind of figure out its tendencies.
Yeah.
And they wanted to mask that a little bit, I think.
They specifically said they picked the least exploitable 5, which meant like they went for a diversity that if you tried to counterplay it, the next one would beat you.
Yeah.
But wouldn't the like final iteration of Alpha Star just be all of these agents put together?
With with a coding in it that lets it decide which one to use, essentially.
Yeah. Because
like you could do that.
Yeah. It
But
seems
the question,
like you can't think of it like a human brain, where it's like, well, this one agent that does this strategy is one human brain. It's like, well, no, I mean, all of this together is Alpha Star. It's just different agents of Alpha Star.
yeah, like the question is, if you would run that league, let's say, but not for 200 years, but for 2,000 years, if a single agent might just arise that is versatile like that you wouldn't even need to do like this theoretical merging of agents. It's hard to say like how it would look like if they just keep it running for infinite time, right?
But yeah, I definitely think that's the key. The one, I'd love to see it go more towards unsupervised. That may be quite a ways out, but I think Dario's bang on that. Like whenever this sort of thing happens, and it's happened in other games too, the AI plays, but the human never got to see it before. So then afterwards, we theory craft. Well, you could exploit it this way. You could exploit it this way. Look at the Dota one. It played. It crushed pro players, and then they're like, "Well, send in a courier," and it just fucks with it. So it couldn't deal with it, right? So there's always a way to exploit. But if you get to sit down over like a few days, pick it apart, and then it still wins, that's the real achievement. But yeah, you can kind of see it has to be a durability test.
And that's always, you know, not that we've been here before, but like that would be the advantage of humans versus machines, right? Like we in everything, you always find a way to break it because it should have some kind of limitations in that way until a true AI, I guess. But it just will outperform humans, and I think that's what was kind of shown here, even though there was some cheating. But it's still, you know, it just raw computation. It was able to do some pretty cool stuff, and I think that's really exciting.
And again, that's the reason why a human together with an AI is usually, for now, more powerful than just an AI, because a human will see, oh, no, this move absolutely makes no sense. Like, you just like, this gets red flagged, but continue with everything else. Humans might not be as good, but we'll find out the complete nonsense that is hard for a machine to understand.
Right.
But I think it doesn't take long to go beyond that. I know Kasparov was talking about that after his match and has written some on human plus machine, but at this point, Alpha Zero is by far the best at chess. Like, you can't put human and Stockfish against it. So,
really? Okay.
Yeah. So, from my understanding,
I think I think the DeepMind team was still telling me human with machine is still stronger, but or maybe it was. I'm not sure anymore.
Well, I guess it depends which machine, because then you've got Alpha Zero against Stockfish and human, or human and Alpha Zero.
Right.
Like, so that's different. There is a point where it's so complex that the human basically can't interact with it, where the machine's like, you know, mate in 138, and you're like, all right. But, so like, you don't know, but it's definitely true that like the human knows when someone's trying to trick it or exploit it, and the computer doesn't know it's being exploited. And that's the key.
For now.
Yeah, for now.
BrownBear, what would you like to see next from DeepMind and Alpha Star? Your greatest fantasy of it?
I guess for me, like first, just like a more reasonable mechanical model. So like mouse and precision and time to move the cursor using the regular camera. I think that would get it to explore the strategic space and a little bit more broadly. And then from the decision making side, it would be good to see. So right now it uses like a raw interface where it like gets data about like creep on the map and units on the map and stuff. But that's kind of like a little bit of cheating as well, because humans are deciding for it what's important on the map. Like, oh, it's important to know that there are units here. So for example, like we don't tell it that there are minerals on the map. It just kind of has to figure that out on its own. So it'd be interesting to see like if it would just take raw pixel information, how it would behave then, and how it would learn from that.
Okay.
Is that still a supervised? Is that still like a supervised bot, or are you thinking more of an unsupervised bot?
Could be supervised, it could be unsupervised, but I think the key would be that humans don't decide what the game features are that are important. It just reads in pixel data and then decides on its own.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I kind of agree with BrownBear overall here, like especially the first part where I would like to see them keep going with this and obviously learn the other races stuff. That's fun for us, but maybe bring down the mechanical peak a little bit, because like I really want, I guess for me personally, I want to see what hundreds of years of strategic development will look like over time as they refine this process. But when it's popping out things like Blink Stalker micro that humans will never be able to do, where Blink Stalkers are suddenly beating Immortals, and we all know that at human levels of micro, like strategically you can kind of make Blink Stalkers work against Immortals, but not in the way that it like we see Alpha Star walk into a natural that has shield batteries, Immortals, sentries, and stasis wards, and it does fine. You know, that's
so I think ideally they need to apply almost different values to APM. That, for example, if it drops in 10 stalkers, maybe every like follow-up stalker of the first is almost ignored as an action, because for human that's just like rapid fire, like sweeping the mouse across, and it's a really easy action. But maybe a blink or a select unit action is more costly as such. And if you have maybe three three select actions quickly in a row, it becomes more and more expensive exponentially. So it can't do these like crazy moves. So I'm sure that you could theoretically apply some math to that and make it more human-like if you really get behind it.
Yeah.
I'd also like to kind of see the computer versus computer games. Like they should release like say 100 replays of the agent versus agent, because
that would be amazing.
I think you would come to see why it developed this way. Like, because I want to see now an agent that did make 8 Immortals against 30 Stalkers lose. I want to see how agent-controlled AI against that can't out-micro itself. Like, if you're pushing them both to the limit, why did it decide on Stalkers? Like, you know, how did it get there? I think is looking at the agent games.
I gotta jump off, you guys. It's great though. Dan
Thanks
will continue hosting. Thank you all for coming on.
Thanks, Jeff. See you.
One of the things I actually wanted to mention, you EnderSword, is that remember that since the agents played against each other, they reached an equilibrium where being good at micro was just the minimum, the bare minimum for it to even operate. So, you know, that's why, you know, I don't know how right or correct it is that it came to the conclusion that having good micro was more important than just coming up with a different strategy, because it was easier to just have that micro. So.
Any other thoughts that any of you guys have on the Alpha Star thing overall? I'm kind of running dry on questions at this point. So
one of the things that kind of, so I don't know if this is still a thing now in competitive tournaments, but like back when I played competitively like 10 years ago, like if you felt like you were better than someone, you would do like a skill check to kind of bully them and make them play even worse in the rest of the series. And I felt like Alpha Star, one of the things I noticed is that it just didn't seem to get intimidated. Like it would always go across the map. It would always do that skill check.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that was kind of one of the advantages that it had.
Well, it's because it doesn't feel fear. Why? Like it just knows it's doing the right thing. So, you know, is that even necessary?
Well,
the reason why I think it could move across the map and continually pressure, because the scouting of it was pretty poor overall. But if you're continually pressuring, you really don't need to scout that much. But the way it was doing it, it felt like it almost everything was coming back to its micro ability, because it knew it could get things away and like not trade poorly. Whereas, I'm seeing it walk across the map with 3 stalkers one at a time. It chrono boosted one of the gates, and like they're not even together and stuff, and it's walking across the map. Whereas as a human, I'm very, very nervous to do that, because if I'm looking at home for 1 second to make a pylon for adepts to come through, and then I miscontrol my stalkers, I might lose an additional stalker, and that's going to be terrible. But yeah,
and that made it
in that way.
It made it very hard for Mana and I to play against it. We got a lot of questions like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? It's because the truth is Alpha Star was so much in our face from the very beginning a lot of times. And the way it did it was very terrifying. So it didn't even feel like we had space to really counterattack or like scout very well. Now that we know that it behaves in a certain way, we could probably do that. But it basically gathered its information by attacking. You absolutely got that right. And, it was probably much easier for it to evolve in that way than to scout and then come up with strategies that work based on the scouting, if you can just scout by pressuring and get ahead that way.
Yeah, learn that these attacks didn't cost resources, but they could win.
Yeah.
So like a lot of those times those early pressures would win, and we saw that in some of these games too. But if it doesn't work, they just retreat and it's fine. Like they didn't lose anything. Like the most they ever lost in those early things was like 2 adepts, which is fine. And even then it usually got at least one of them out. So yeah.
And I guess in addition to that, some of the things were just weird, like how long it would stay on 2 gateways. And again, that has to be like kind of micro based. And it does feel like if you guys get to play the same one a few more times, it's like, oh, this one stays on 2 gates that long. Okay, well, there's definitely ways to abuse that. It's going to have a peak of units where your additional gates and cutting some units earlier on is going to pass it. But I don't know. Overall, I was just loved this whole demonstration. I thought this was like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. It's so far beyond what anybody else has done, even though it's not far from perfect. And I think, I'm also a little bit unhappy about some of the media portraying it like StarCraft has been beaten. And there was some people in the maybe even in the machine learning community that was like, wow, you guys beat StarCraft. I thought it was even much further away. No, like I think we're gonna put up really good fight for quite some time still, until like they can beat us in the complete game in longer series where people actually kind of know what they're up against. I think they'll be surprised how complicated StarCraft is. I think they're not entirely ready for that yet.
Yeah.
Dario, do you think if you were to get the chance to play it again, you would like be able to beat it right now?
Like, I mean, it's a bit awkward because it's like this whole PvP situation, not my main race.
Yeah.
But let's say I have a week to prepare. I can like get back on the PvP grind train. I would easily beat the agents I played against because they weren't that good yet. I don't think my Protoss would be good enough to beat the agents that Mana played against, because that's just too good for how my Protoss is. But I think Mana would, if he played against those 5 same agents, knowing it's the same 5 agents, he would probably 5-0 it. I think it's not, maybe not 5-0 it, but he would definitely take maps.
Yeah, so the agents do have some weaknesses here. I kind of do feel like it was kind of fair to mix in the 5 different agents. I know some people have been critical about that, but again, this whole thing is Alpha Star, and obviously one agent doing one strat, like you will be able to find like, oh, if I hide a gateway here, like you actually, if you hadn't put that shield battery above your pylon, Dario, you would have won that game.
Yeah.
For sure. But obviously just a tiny mistake, but you're starting to figure out that like, oh, there are things that even though these are different agents, they have,
because none of them scouted, right? Like I could probably go back into the match and like proxygate all of them. That's how I felt.
Yeah, you could find holes probably in each game that it doesn't see certain things. So I think it's totally fine, because just like in a best of 5, you play 5 games against someone, they're going to change things and mix them up. Whereas a single agent, I don't think that they're there yet where a single agent can do that. So I actually appreciated that they used 5 different ones, because I don't want to see an agent, even the ones that were fantastic at micro, like maybe they start out 2-0 against you guys, and then you're like, oh, it loses to DT drop from the left side of the map. Cool. Like, and then we don't learn anything there.
Which exactly what could have happened if you played the same agent over again, where like the whole thing, the whole demonstration, just like, oh, okay, well, the next 3 games is I just proxy this thing and that's it, right? And that's not very exciting from like a demonstration point of view. So
yeah, and I think it's totally fair too, because again, technologically, you can just build an agent that randomly selects agents. Like,
that's possible.
You could make it one agent. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if it just randomly selects. So it could vary its ability.
And especially because they can run the agent on, very like household hardware. Like, I feel that's totally fair. Like, if it would be that a single agent needs to run like on a crazy supercomputer, then it would feel like a little bit awkward that you play against 5 different ones. But I think because they are there technologically, that they can like put it into like, because ultimately we need to think about they're doing this for real life application in the real world, right? And I'm totally fine with having like a self-driving car and it has different agents for different situations that it can like decide which one to pick. Like, I'm not going to be like, well, that's not
that's not a fair way to drive.
Yeah.
That's not a yeah, like I rather have one that picks the correct one in the correct situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think the exploitability is really the thing to look at this point, is like knowing again that you're up against an AI. If you had time to practice against it, I think one of the first things a human would do is we would immediately start trying to do weird strategies and just things that it's never seen. So like we could easily come up with something that in its thousands of agents playing hundreds of years of games have never seen.
Yeah.
It's probably never been proxy tempests. It's probably never been, like, there's tons of things that have probably just never happened, and you could do that and trick it each time.
And I think that's why StarCraft is so awesome, because you can do these durability tests, and like I really want to sit down and do like adversarial attacks on it, because again, like coming to the real life example of a self-driving car, right now we can build self-driving cars that are really good in like most situations in the world, but maybe if I hold up a sign with like a certain QR code on it, or a sign like it just like drives into the next like person, or like into a corner, because we don't agents act in a really odd way where they make decisions that don't make much sense to us, and that's why StarCraft is so cool, because you can test out how well can an agent fare against really odd stuff that doesn't make sense, and if it passes that, I feel a lot better about it being out in the real world, because as soon as it's okay with like really weird shit happening, it'll be safe for like you using the real world basically. And I think that's the biggest opportunity with StarCraft, to use these attacks and try to find out how durable these agents really can be.
I believe, if I recall correctly from the AlphaGo documentary, after they beat the European champion, they had him come in and kind of do this thing where he tried to figure out some ways in which it was weak or had some holes in its play to help it. So, I mean, as far as Dario, you were doing this stuff in December, and none of us knew about it until the show, right? Until I think I found out the 23rd of January that you were there. So, as far as we know, they might have pro gamers in there playing against it right now. I mean, that's definitely a possibility.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also throw in agents that are incentivized to do random stuff. So, like, they could have in their pool something that just lets it see something that would never see, because it has to be able to deal with it. Like, to bring it back to that car example, the cars know what happens if a dog runs across the road. They don't know what happens if a giraffe runs across the road, but they have to. Like, someday one will escape a zoo, it'll come up, and so you've got to know what will it do when it does something that it does.
I wouldn't know what to do.
And also, it has to be able to not act badly when malice is even. Like, if people even attempt to break the car, because like I, as a StarCraft 2 player, I will intend to break the StarCraft 2 agent.
Yes.
Just as well, there will be people that will try to crash self-driving cars, because unfortunately in a society you will always have a few people that are awful. And so I think it's the parallel is very interesting, that you can have people working on that. And StarCraft 2 is much closer to how complicated the real world is as chess or Go is. So I think that's a great opportunity about it.
Yeah, for sure.
I really hope they continue forward. You guys have anything else before we jump into user questions? Anyone?
A lot of them are about the AI anyway, so
Yes.
go for it.
Just going right to it.
Yeah.
Staying very, very topical.
Yeah.
Okay, then. We're going to jump into the priority Patreon questions. We'll be asking the best questions submitted. If you are a high-ranking Patreon supporter, patreon.com/ThePylonShow. All right, let's take a look at these. From Still Knocked, we'll just go around to everyone to get your point of view, I guess, on this. After seeing God Tier Micro from Alpha Star against Mana, how interested are you in a no-holds-barred, infinite APM and reaction time AI? Do you think it's meaningful if humans can't accomplish what it does? Let's start with BrownBear.
I mean, I think it would be interesting from a design perspective to see the optimal way of playing StarCraft if you had infinite APM and infinite mechanics. But I think for me individually, I wouldn't be that interested. I would be more interested in regular human professional play.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I mean, I guess you could probably pretty quickly theorize what are the best, what's the best thing? Like, what's the most microable unit in the game? Is it the Blink Stalker, or can you just kill someone with Proxy Barracks Marines? Like, is that the most powerful micro thing? I'm not sure. I feel like it would get extremely degenerate extremely quickly.
Was that question like for an AI against a human, or just AIs against each other?
I think AI against AI probably.
I hope so.
Either way, you didn't.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I personally, I don't think either of them would be interesting. No, they'd be interesting to a degree, but I don't think we'd learn anything from it.
I think you'd learn what the best unit is. I think if you did it literally unlimited, I think it would actually devolve very, very quickly into either worker rushes or something, or just mass reaper, or like it would devolve into something very, very low level. Like, I think.
But it would be pretty cool to see.
It would be cool to see.
What if it doesn't? Like maybe it isn't as simple as we think. Because maybe the Reaper Rush would just be held by somebody who plays defensively. Like I still think also it would probably degenerate. And I would see, for example, Sturk maybe being like it's interesting because it's not super obvious what the best race would be. Because imagine I would think Terran would be the best because everything is ranged units, and perfectly micro ranged units are best. But maybe a Zerg that has perfect creep spread, perfect understanding of how to make economy as quickly as possible, maybe it will just always win with a push before Terran has enough units. So I think from that experimental point of view, it would be really interesting to see it. But then it would get really boring really quickly.
I honestly, I don't think it'll be degenerate, or I don't think it'll be boring, because like even when watching any of the other AI tournaments like SACAT and or in those, that you see a lot of weird things that you would never see ever in a human game. Like, for example, when Marines do the perfect splitting in all directions at once just to avoid like tank shots, is something that of course no human would ever be able to do, because an entire Marine squad moving in individual directions is just and a Terran in StarCraft 2 dropping 20 medevacs full of Marines in 20 different, completely separate locations, stimming them individually. Like, it would be probably ideal. Like we see that all the time when we were watching the bot tournaments, but and it can be fun to look at. You're like, oh, that's kind of cool. But it would be cool to see, but I think it would be cool to see like once. Let them do it. Let them do it for like 1,000 years, and then show us your results and be like, yeah, that's cool. And then we'd probably be done with it, but it would be cool to see.
Yeah. A big part of StarCraft, I think, is being able to fudge things that should work with things like splash damage. Like, look at StarCraft 1 ZVZ versus StarCraft 2 ZVZ. StarCraft 2 ZVZ is simply better because it has things like Banelings that can mess up the early Ling attacks and stuff, right? So I think that's what makes it interesting. If suddenly Banelings suck, you know how bad ZVZ is going to become? Oh my god. Oh my god. I don't even want to. I'll watch it one time. All right. I'll keep going through the Patreon questions, and we'll do the deep mine ones first and jump back to any interesting non-deep mine ones. All right. What do you think the chances are in 2019? This is from Critter MD, that Alpha Star will be able to join a premier tournament. Would love to see the limits in place and let it loose on BlizzCon. I don't think that'll happen.
I don't think that's
with Cyril crushing it at the end. Yes, that's the ultimate fan fiction. But
and the prize pool goes to Google.
I don't know if that'll cover the cost, but all right. But yeah, so what do you guys? I guess let's ask this question of: do you guys think that they would be able to, in 2019, make this actual pro level with, not just one matchup or something like that, in a more APM limited type of mindful way of doing that?
I think so. I think they just had this one agent against Dario in like December, and then a month later next one that was much more trained in January. So they have a lot of resources behind the project. So if we're talking about 2019 being up until next BlizzCon is for them to show something, I think obviously I don't know, but I think by the time next BlizzCon they'll have something. Whether or not they'll show it, if it's something interesting to them, we don't know. But I think at least by next BlizzCon there'll be some progress, maybe a new race or even all 3 races or whatever have you.
Yeah, I think they could do it. Again, if they're sticking with the supervised learning, I think it's actually not that far away to do it at all. But the other thing with it is to keep up. Remember, every time there's a patch, every time there's a new map, every time there's a new map, every time whatever, they have to redo it. So I mean, not from scratch, but they do have to redo it. So it would be neat to see, to literally put it in a tournament. No, people would complain about the seeding. But but it would be cool at the end. If at the end of this year they felt they were there, say we're going to take the top Terran, Zerg, and Protoss and get it to play against this thing. That would be a cool show.
Yeah, it would be kind of awesome to see a tournament for select the human champions.
Yeah.
Then
exactly.
Those 3 people go up against the agent. I don't know how realistic it is that they will be on world champion level within a year, because I actually don't know how easy it will be to train non-mirror matchups because of the self-play they're implementing. I don't know if there's a way for them to do self-play anyway, that it just plays against the Zerg plays against the Protoss, but I think it becomes complicated, how do you lift each other up from that, right? It's a different task than if you just have a Protoss versus Protoss.
You add levels of complexity, and then you get the matchups on the different maps. You get, instead of training 3 leagues, you're training 58 very quickly.
And then the problem is that just they don't have access to infinite amount of PCs, right? Running that. Interesting anecdote though about the maps. They accidentally let them play on different maps at some point, and they were okay. It wasn't as big of a deal as they thought it would be. And also about the patches, patches can break them if new abilities are introduced. For example, the battlecruiser with its new attack is technically a new, completely new element of the game. Then it has problems with that. But I think the agents we played against actually played on an older patch. And they will still learn the new stuff anyway, even if it was training on a previous patch. As long as the patch is not too huge, it's not a big deal. I think it's not like humans play completely different either. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I pretty much agree. I think it's possible they'll finish by 2019. I think it's also possible they don't finish in 2019 if they still keep having challenges with the StarCraft client. I would be I don't know why my mind goes to this, but I feel like life as a StarCraft pro gamer is actually quite difficult, just with the working hours and compared to the income. And so I would feel really bad if they put it in an actual tournament. I would probably not watch.
That would be. It would have to be an exhibition.
Yeah, it would also. Yeah, it would just be completely be unfair. If you end up on the same bracket side as Alpha Star, I mean, it's been happening to people this year with several. But that would be another level.
It'd be good if it was a reveal. You had just at the end of it, surprise! It was Alpha Star all along.
If there was just a brand new guy,
just
pretending.
All right. Excellent question. From our very own Alessander. Tilo, you said you played like 100 matches to practice PvP before playing DeepMind, but did you study any like VODs of AIs to see, to get a feel for what it might be like to play against a computer type thing?
I didn't, because I didn't feel it would be very helpful, because I didn't know, Alpha Star is a completely new thing that might just be entirely different from anything we've seen so far, and I think that probably proved to be correct. I wanted to go into it unbiased as well, because if I just make an assumption from like some bots I saw, some other AI, I don't think that would have been very helpful.
All right. Another question for TLO from Toei. What surprised you more about the AI, its general aggressiveness, or the 16 disruptors?
So I was very surprised, first of all, that I was losing.
Yeah.
I think what surprised me the most was that neither that it was aggressive nor the disruptors really. What surprised me the most was that there were so many different strategies that emerged. Because when I was playing it, I was going into the match assuming that all the matches will be very similar. And even now that I know it's 5 different agents, I still think it's great to see that in their Alpha Star League, many different strategies would emerge and many different strategies would be viable. And I think I almost didn't give enough credit to StarCraft, thinking that maybe it'll just all be one build that is optimal and everything else sucks. And we just, as humans, couldn't figure that out. So that was most surprising to me, that there is so much build order variety in the Alpha Star League.
All right. Question for everyone from GGE Mini 19. Do you guys get worried that AI could eventually get to a level that's so complex that it essentially solves StarCraft to a point that isn't manageable for humans to keep up with? Is there a point where AI can undermine the human skill ceiling of the game?
Ooh, that's a good question. I like that one. I'm gonna say I'm not particularly worried. I think personally that there's a level of which AI follows certain logic of optimal and balances that with self-preservation. And I think that humans have the ability to contradict those kind of things, which StarCraft, being the game that it is, has, I think there's a way to exploit, even at the best of the AI, and that human creativity will always have that edge, but we'll see.
It also assumes a little bit, I mean, it's part of the question, but that the game is actually solvable.
Oh yeah,
and,
that's true.
And then there's you can't solve rock, paper, scissors because it is balanced. So the fact
Rock is a little bit better.
Rock is a little bit better. I mean, the Simpsons would agree with you too. But it is the case that, for instance, like Defender's Advantage may be a little bit better. So maybe there is no aggressive strategy that is optimal. Maybe the only thing to do is defend, split the map. Like maybe there really is no
is there a War Games reference in here?
Yeah. So basically, yeah. Maybe, yeah, you play tic-tac-toe over and over and then you quit. Like
the solution is not to play. That's it.
Yeah, basically. So, or at least there's nothing that's stable. So no matter what you did, there is always a way to counter it, and it never actually hits a stable or solved point. And there's so many options, like just in the opening moves, like you said, 10 to the 26. Could we ever computationally figure it all out? No. So there may literally be no stable point.
I actually think that I think it's possible that AI could, rather than undermining the human skill ceiling, I think it could actually be a really great tool for the developers. I remember a year ago we had this problem in PvT where we felt like Protoss had to flip a coin to figure out what kind of proxy Terran was doing. And it's hard for a human to run through all the different possibilities of all the different Terran proxies that you can do. Be like, okay, when he has this much gas and he sends out a worker at this time, or he does this and it's a cyclone, or this is a widow mine. And maybe the AI could tell us and be like, hey, if you need to respond perfectly to what Terran is doing, here are the things that you need to do. And the developers could look at that and say, oh, is this reasonable? Or, oh, it's not reasonable to expect a human to know all this. So I think it could help in that case.
I think
Like in
that's
balance patch, in terms of like designing balance patches and that whatnot, or are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, you could test it out to be like, okay, the AI says this is Imba before we ever put it
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really smart. You wouldn't want to have a perfectly balanced game just because you can perfectly balance it, but I think AI could be used to identify big problems, and then human intervention can take place.
Like,
You don't want to just run StarCraft on, for 1,000 years and then okay, now we made a version that every win rate is 50% because that's not necessarily the best StarCraft. But if you run StarCraft forever and then it turns out there's only one strategy that's actually good, you need to change something, right? And so that's really interesting. But coming back to the question, I don't think it undermines StarCraft because people still watch chess, and I don't think less people watch chess now just because AI can play it. Ultimately, people are interested in what humans can do, about the drama behind it. I don't think artificial intelligence will, eliminate any competition, any art and music made by humans. I think people will still always enjoy things that other humans make because we are very much, creatures that live in a society and enjoy seeing other humans doing stuff that is awesome.
yeah, exactly.
So I think you don't have to be worried about that, at least, in the next
For
100
now.
years.
Yeah, like the optimal strategy in the 100-meter sprint is to go faster. But it's still fun to see someone do it.
Yeah,
Listen,
and still we don't like, why don't we just have a car run a 100?
Exactly.
Well, you can't do a signature series on Alpha Star, right? So it'll always still be good to have people.
Well, if they ever make a documentary about it, I guess that will be similar to it. Actually, I like the idea of it finding more optimal ways to play. I actually think that makes it cooler and more fun to watch. And to kind of relate this to AlphaGo and AlphaZero, like, the fact that it's showing moves that the entire scene, like, I guess the one big move that we got to see that everyone talked about, I think more than anything else, strategically speaking, was the oversaturation of probes. So that, I thought, I'm just tickled by that. I think it's super cool. I've lost a lot of MMR trying to do that, but it's an interesting thought experiment. But like within Go, right, it was making moves that it's like, 1 in 10,000 times this will happen by a human, and that's like, it's really cool. It kind of helps push the understanding forward. And for instance, they've been doing a lot of AlphaZero looking at chess games, and they like had the world champion Magnus Carlsen, some of his games, and they show what he does, and they're like, what is AlphaZero going to do? You can find YouTube videos of this right now, and it's really fascinating to look at. And I don't think it makes chess any less entertaining. In fact, I think it's very entertaining how AlphaZero would play some of those games. So I would like to see what it would want to do, kind of like what Jeff was saying earlier, where there's a set of StarCraft players who want to emulate playing, perfect StarCraft, right? Like, I guess it's easier to look at in StarCraft 1, which has an unchanging balance set, where it's like, you might look at Flash and try to do what Flash does. You can't do it. That doesn't make the game any less beautiful. He's the best. Everyone agrees. There's no question. He's like an AlphaGo of StarCraft 1, but like, it's fun to look at that and be like, well, that's the benchmark, and I'll see how close I can get, and it's going to help improve my play. Just seeing what he does, whatever you watch, you're like, well, that's correct. I can just watch that and be like, that's correct. So it kind of helps you to learn better as well. So, I mean, I would love to see optimal play out of AlphaStar. I think that'd be super cool.
I just to piggy on that, I would like to ultimately see like creative play out of it. I just like to see it do like, just like the oversaturation of probes. I want to see more of those weird things that turn out to be amazing. That's what I want out of this entire project, is like weird strategies that you're like, that doesn't make any sense, and then it's like, oh wait, that actually is the best thing to do.
What's really funny to me is that the fact that it was over making probes, and like a lot of people are thinking that's maybe the right thing to do. It would be so funny if that just emerged because AlphaStar sucked at walling off. And all
it could really be that. It could actually.
I actually think that's quite reasonable, that it's learned to overbuild because it wants to sacrifice them and it's easier.
Yeah.
I really think that's what happened. Yeah.
And that's makes me sad.
I love it. I don't care why it is. It's just the fact that we're having this conversation about it, I think, like,
it actually kind of brings up too, like, skill level differences, that it may have learned that behavior really early on and never shedded it. So what is optimal for a GM player to do is not what is optimal for a gold player to do. So maybe it's optimal for a gold player to overmake probes because they're going to lose probes. And a GM's not. Like the way that you defend like a Widow Mine or something with a 2-second reaction time versus a 0.1 second reaction time are different. So maybe it's doing something wrong, right? Like on purpose.
Like, and I can vouch that oversaturation against Widow Mine drops is not good. All right. That was all the deep mine questions. There's one more question here I want to throw out there that I think you guys can add to from Sambinken. SC2 is a very steep learning curve. I often have trouble keeping friends interested in playing such a challenging, or as they call it, sadistic game. I have given them tips and pointed them towards streamers who have noob-friendly content. Do you all have any other suggestions to try and keep new players interested?
Just make friends with masochists.
That works. Yeah, I think creativity. I think often when an established player tries to teach their friends, they try and teach them to be good. And that's not the point. You want to teach them to have fun. Like when I don't know about you, but like when we all started, it's like you experiment with stuff, you do silly stuff. Like the fun things when I was starting StarCraft was cannon rushing and planetary fortress rushing and making mass void ray, like doing bad stuff, but having fun. So let them learn that StarCraft is like a canvas to paint nonsense on. And then after they learn to love that and like do silly stuff and have fun, then they might want to get better. But they don't start out wanting to play in the GSL.
Yeah, absolutely. People make the mistake all the time. Like, don't sit down your friend and tell them, sit down 100 games and only 4 gate, because that's going to be the quickest way for you to gain an MMR. And I think that happens a lot when people try to teach other people StarCraft. It's like, just do this one thing, just follow the script over and over, and you're going to get better. Like, as soon as you don't, have too much money in the bank anymore, then you're allowed to 2-base. But before that, only make stalkers. That's the only thing you're allowed to do. Yeah, I think Ender completely nailed it there. It's just like, let people have fun. It's not about leagues. And, I think it's important to tell people, even if they're losing a lot at the beginning, they will always hit close to 50% win rate. Eventually, they'll face players that are a similar skill level to them. And, there's also nothing wrong with letting them play bots for a while. For somebody who's completely new to RTS, that can be just as fun as playing against a human and less frustrating. So, just find the right angle for them in StarCraft. Maybe like co-op, maybe like the arcade campaign. There's many different venues to like push them into the direction of StarCraft, I think.
I think for me, I would suggest turn the solitary game into a social game, because I think one of the things is that StarCraft is obviously a solo game. So honestly, when I started StarCraft, one of the biggest things for me is that since Battle.net 1.0 was such like just basically a chat, basically Discord, but with a game attached to it. The idea would be, hang out with them on Discord, hang out with them, and while they're playing, right, and just keeping them engaged so that they don't feel alone. That would be my thing. It's just always just keep someone engaged in the game, just socially, right? Chill while playing StarCraft.
What I always tell people is to just think carefully about why you're playing the game. And like, I think a lot of people just assume that they should play competitively, and you should really ask yourself, like, why? Like, do you want to compete? Do you want to win? Or do you just want to have fun? Like, do you just want to play co-op or play the arcade? Like, I think the competitive mode is actually one of the least popular modes compared to like co-op and the arcade. And so if you want to play competitively, I think that's great. But I always recommend just people play the fun modes, then only play competitively if they really, really want to.
Winning is fun though, BrownBear.
In order to win, you have to lose. A lot of people don't like that.
You have to lose a hell of a lot to win.
Yeah, it's so true.
Especially considering the ladder brings you to a 50%-ish mark.
Yeah.
I mean, I started playing, when I first started playing, I was playing 7 versus 1 comp stomps to learn the game. And it was a very kind of relaxing, fun way to do it. And I remember one of my early games in like the first month that I was playing, I lost a 3 versus 1 comp stomp on Lost Temple. And that was nothing like having a computer beat 3 humans in StarCraft 1. Those AIs were stupid. All right. That is all the questions that we have from the Discord. Thank you everyone very much for for the questions and watching. A lot of the questions that we had in that chat, we actually went over during the discussion, so you can find your answers there. So yeah, I guess we are just about ready to close it out. I want to hear from you guys what you're up to, where people can find you and all that. Dario, let's start with you. What are you doing? Where can people watch?
What I'm doing is what we're all doing every day, is playing StarCraft, and you can follow me on twitch.tv/liquidtlo. I'll be back with a stream tomorrow. I started a pretty early schedule, getting up early for a pro gamer. It means it's 7:45 in the morning, and I'll aim to probably start streaming around 9 to 10 a.m. every day. That's East Coast time, because I'm based in Toronto now, and just come by and say hello, follow my channel, and hopefully I can bring you a lot of fun StarCraft. Also follow my Instagram, because I'm starting to become more active on that. So that's LiquidTLO as well on Instagram.
Okay, excellent. EnderSword, how about you?
Basically, we are doing a AI tournament. We're on season 3 of it. So we have pro bots every Monday and Thursday. We're about halfway through season 3. And we are doing a live finals in Toronto, live with AI, at Meltdown in Toronto.
That's cool.
February 23rd. But the one thing that we're going to be able to do is we've got a way now that humans can play against these community designed AIs. So we're going to have a few show matches there of people of various skill levels playing against basically the winners of our league.
Yep. Nice. And those bots have no APM limit, so they'll do weird things to you.
Yeah, we have bots that have like over 100,000 APM.
Yeah. And they do weird things.
They do. Yeah, it makes no sense. Like 100,000 APM, no decision making. but they're good.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Drek, you have anything?
Yeah, no, Ender pretty much said it. That ProBots is what we've been doing. And February 23rd is the finals here in Meltdown, Toronto. So check it out. Just follow it on ESChamp on Twitch.
Yeah, you guys do a lot of great work over there. Thank you for your contributions to StarCraft. BrownBear, how about you? Where can people find you? What are you working on? What's up?
Hey, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at twitter.com/brownbear_47. I work on kind of larger projects that kind of take some time. I'm working on a larger project related to Blizzard games right now, but it'll probably take about a month, and it'll be like a video. So you can also subscribe to me on YouTube, youtube.com/brownbeargaming. That's all I'm doing.
Actually, I have a question for BrownBear. What mic do you use? I need to know.
Really good.
Everyone says that you have like the best mic, and I agree. So what mic are you currently using right now?
I was actually really surprised. I just went to Amazon and I looked under headsets, and I found the cheapest one that I could find. It was $26. I can find you the brand name if you want, but I use it for Counter-Strike mostly, so I don't really care too much about the quality.
Wow.
But I'm glad that it's good.
We are also
just have a good voice.
buying into these expensive. Yeah. This thing cost me like $150. Like, what am I doing? Maybe his voice just sounds much better than.
Maybe it is. I think it's just the BrownBear voice. Maybe that's it.
Yeah. All right. As for me, just thank you everyone for coming on the show. Really appreciate you guys. This was a very fascinating discussion, kind of a different type of episode, but I've been very much looking forward to this and picking all your very smart brains about it. For me personally, we'll be back with the Pylon Show next week with a more normal episode. Obviously, we've gone over the deep mind stuff, so we'll get back into GSL and ASL and all that good stuff, the WCS that's going on at that point. I did put a video on YouTube where I went through most of the replays of TL and Mana versus Alpha Star, so you guys can go check that out if you want. youtube.com/Artosis.TV. So anyways, a big thanks to our entire Pylon staff, Cobra Alessander, and all the rest. And we will see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.